The Eritrean voice.
هنا صوت إرتريا.
قدمت إرتريا.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Maram Nadi with you. You are now listening to the Eritrean voice on 355 AM at 3CR station. This session will be airing every Monday 7 to 8 PM. In this session, we'll firstly discuss the highlights of Australian news, followed shortly by the Eritrean news based in Australia. If you have any queries, please call the station on 94198377. Again, the number 94198377. This program could also be located on the website www.3cr.org.au/Eritrean. Thank you for listening.
مرحبا بكم مستمعينا الأعزاء. هنا صوت إرتريا. صوت إرتريا تأتيكم من إذاعة 3CR مساء كل يوم الاثنين من 7 إلى 8 مساء بتوقيت ملبورن على الموجة AM 855. كذلك تجدوا برنامجنا على الويب سايت www.3cr.org.au/Eritrean.
مرحبا كبران سمعتنا زي دمتي إرتراي. دمتي إرترا كاب مدبر راديو 3CR كوميونيتي راديو اب AM شمنتي حمشتي سوني كاب ساعة شوعتي كساب ساعة شمنتي زم حلالف سومنا ومدد راديو إيو. كم كبران سمعتنا اب مربب حبريتا www.3cr.org.au/Eritrean كتابلنا تخلو سناي انتخدار. أهلا بكم مستمعي إذاعة صوت إرتريا في برنامجنا اليوم 4 من جانوري 2016. أولا كل عام وأنتم بخير، ونتمنى هذا العام يكون عام السلام في جميع أنحاء العالم وبالذات في بلادنا إرتريا. مستمعينا الأعزاء، في برنامج اليوم نبدأ مع الأستاذ أحمد محمود بالأخبار، وبعد الأخبار لدينا لقاء مع الأستاذ خالد إدريس سعيد علي. تفضل أستاذ أحمد.
نعم، شكرا جزيلا الأستاذ خالد إدريس سعيد علي، هو متحصل على البكالوريوس من جامعة كالغاري في علم النفس والعلوم الثقافية والمجتمعات. عمل مرشد تربوي ومستشار تعليمي في مدارس كندية بمدينة كالغاري. لديه خبرة 8 سنوات في هكلed وخبرة 5 سنوات في الحكومة الولائية مع حكومة ألبرتا الكندية، والآن مقيم معنا في مدينة ملبورن. فأهلا وسهلا به، وسنجري معه اللقاء بعد قليل. إذا كان لديكم أي استفسار يمكن الاتصال بنا على الرقم 94198377، فابقوا معنا.
أهلا بكم مستمعينا الأعزاء، والآن الفقرة الثانية من برنامج اليوم. كما ذكرنا في بداية برنامجنا سوف نجري هذا اللقاء مع الأستاذ خالد إدريس سعيد علي. Dear listeners, our second part from today's program will be we run this interview with Mr. Khalid Idris Said Ali. Mr. Khalid Idris, his educational background, his psychology and cultural anthropology. His professional background is education and student advisor with focus on students counseling and transition and retention. Welcome, Mr. Khalid, and thank you for coming. If you can tell us about yourself, who is Khalid Idris?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
I'd like to thank Eritrean Voice Radio for giving me the opportunity to be here today to speak on a very important topic.
Yep.
Alhamdulillah. A little bit more myself. I moved to Australia 6 months ago to settle here with my family, alhamdulillah.
And you are originally
from Eritrea. I was born in Eritrea.
Yep.
We migrated to Canada when I was 13, going on to 14 years of age. So at the tender age, you know, when you become a teenager. So
yeah.
It's a very sensitive age, as we know.
Yeah.
From being parents, or also from actually being that age as well too. So growing up in Canada during that time with limited language, many barriers. My parents had limited language as well too, so I can identify with some of the challenges with a lot of new immigrants. I've completed my education in Canada. I completed, as you mentioned, a bachelor in psychology and cultural anthropology. And I also have certification in counseling as well too. Now my focus in terms of work for the last 15 years, 8 years of them was at Bow Valley College, followed by 5 years at the state level government of Alberta.
In Canada.
In Canada. The focus was mainly counseling and making availability of training to students, and also helping transitioning students from high school to university, because it's a difficult transition. In addition to that, I've also worked in terms of assisting schools. So I also worked for a brief period of time in the beginning before going on to Bow Valley College for a year as a case manager for the majority of the schools in Calgary to help students transition into post-secondary institution and also to focus on completing their goals. So my focus has always been assisting students to maximize their academic potential. And what that means basically is we understand now, especially in the 21st century, it's a knowledge economy. You no longer can be successful without knowledge and without some type of certification. It's very difficult. Some can do it, but the easiest way to pursue a viable life in terms of economics is to pursue education. In addition to that, I'm very involved at the community level. I do most of my work outside of my actual work because I value and I'm passionate about working with students. And I can identify, as I said earlier, with the challenges that students do experience. So I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity today to be here.
You are more than welcome.
I understand you have some important questions.
Yes, and thank you very much. We would like to thank you for your time too, Khalid. So if we can kick on with the first question, what does it mean, psychology and anthropology?
So psychology.
Give us an idea.
Yes, in Arabic, of course, I think it's علم النفس.
علم النفس,
So within psychology, there is also specializations. Right? Now, my preference in psychology was to understand how the brain works. And so to that effect, I focused mainly on areas of neuropsychology. And that helped me to help students, to help them understand that you're not limited biologically to be academically successful unless you have some special needs. Now, when students attend regular schooling, whether it's private or public, that means you have the mental capacity to succeed. And so at the neurological level, we understand from psychology that people do have capacities to succeed, whether it's physical or mental. Unless you have some mental disabilities. But if you are in a public school or in a private school that is not specialized, then what are the reasons you do not succeed? And that's how I began specializing even outside of work to assist students with that. In terms of anthropology, there are two branches. I specialize in cultural anthropology, and that's really to understand the societies. When I studied psychology, because I come from an immigrant background, I had difficulties trying to relate psychology to my own society, to my own culture. Because many of the teachings in psychology go against the teachings of my own culture. Especially explaining to people why they feel sad. Why are you unsuccessful in certain things? So, cultural anthropology helped me quite a bit to understand different cultures and how you can bring the two together and benefit from psychology. And I think this approach, Idris, describes a culture as a personality that is interpreted of experience guided by symbolic structures. In the physical anthropology, yes, but in the cultural anthropology, there are certain things in terms of mythology, yes. But I think the specifics for me, and I did not take anthropology, cultural anthropology, to specialize. It was to broaden my own knowledge on how to understand psychology. I needed to have some interpretation of what other cultures, not just my own culture, would interpret psychology. And so that assisted me in also really understanding psychology.
Okay. So as what does it mean to be an education and student advisor?
Obviously, that's the role that I've fulfilled in my professional work.
And I think you are specialized on that.
Yes. And so basically, student advising or education advising, it's a dynamic relationship with the student.
Yeah.
But it's also a relationship that is based on respect. Respecting that the students come in with concerns.
Yeah.
The advisor is not there to judge or to devalue the student needs. The advisor is there to basically listen, number one, and understand what the needs are, but you also have the tools. We're armed with the tools in terms of providing them with options, guidance, and also the counseling capacity. It's easy for someone to listen to someone's concern, and parents do that all the time. So what I do is not very different than what parents do, and I have to give parents credit, especially new immigrants. They come to, whether it's Canada or Australia or Europe, with many difficulties. Once they arrive, there are cultural barriers, language barriers, and their main objective in the beginning is to have a place where to settle. The next objective is to have a successful education for their kids. So they have two responsibilities. Now, when I give advice to students, it's similar to what parents give to their kids. The only difference is they're not armed with the knowledge to give them that guidance.
But with good willingness only. And
of course, and based on respect. And based on respect. And I think, for me specifically, I try to help students realize their maximum or potential academic. Like as I said, and that's understanding that once you've been accepted into university or college, or once you're in regular schooling in terms of high school, you have the ability to succeed. Now, the question always is, and we know the statistics, but the question always is, why aren't you succeeding? What are the barriers?
So what are the techniques that you use as educational and student advisor, the techniques and advice that you provide to students until they succeed?
Obviously...
and when do you think this advice should start to the student?
Okay. Obviously we...
Because you mentioned that parents, they give advices by good willingness where they want to see their kid. But for you as a professional, just tell us the tools that you use and the advice. When should start? Now,
I'll start with where should the advice start, because there's a foundation for that.
Okay.
By research or through research, there are three areas that have been identified. The first one is the primary one, which is the pre-prep, before students begin prep school. The second stage that's critical is grade 7, year 7. And the last stage is obviously grade 12, because you're moving on to post-secondary. Now, the pre-prep, and I see these difficulties, and I can't speak about Australia. I can tell you about, and for those who are listening, obviously they can relate this to their own experiences if it relates. But speaking from my knowledge in Canada, is from our minority government, or families, or from the new immigrants. Students who are born in Canada and they're beginning prep school at at the age of 5. Some of them do not speak even the English language fluently to go into prep school. Now that's a critical stage. What we're doing is, and again, I'll relate to psychology. There are psychological barriers that parents don't understand that they set for their kids. If you are in prep school, and the teacher says, if you have a question, put your hand up. That's one of the basic lessons you learn in prep school. For kids who are not fluent, because let's say, for example, at home, they speak Tigray, Tigrinya, Arabic, the TV's in Arabic, the child did not have enough opportunities to at least, now, for parents, you know that you're in the West for a reason. And you're staying. So you have to give your child an opportunity from prep. Now, when the child goes to class and the teacher says, if you have a question, put your hands up, the child has no idea. So they may speak out of turn, even if they have a question. When the teacher says, this is time for recess now, the student is looking around, what does that mean? So right away, they become psychologically defeated. They think they are less than the others. When you notice the other students who are fluent in English, they're proactive. They listen.
And
they act.
Yep.
And they become very active in terms of the dealings in the classroom. Their hands go up. They're very sharp in movement.
Part of the discussion.
And so the child, from the early age, becomes reluctant to participate. They do not want to be part of groups. We all want to belong.
Yep.
Especially children want to belong. So at that age, if you are not given the basic tools, and all I'm saying to parents is this: watch your Arabic TVs, watch your own cultural TVs. My own parents spoke to me in Tigray at home, and we still do.
Yep.
That did not stop me from being successful in school. However, you have to have time where it's set up for your kids, 1 hour, 2 hours per week, per day, where they're actually doing some actual English work, the alphabet, some basic writing. They need to learn how to write their name. This is the prep.
Age.
So this is even before they begin school. This is prep. So before they step into the prep school, the classroom, they need to have these basic foundations. Because as we know, the way the pyramid is built, you need to have basic foundations to build. The second stage that's critical beyond that is grade 7 or year 7. And the reason year 7 is critical is because you're moving on to high school beyond that. And through research it's been identified that if you're not successful in year 7 and your grades are not very high, there is a high possibility you may drop out in high school.
In high school.
In high school. And then by grade 12, and that's prior to grade 12. And then in grade 12, that's the next critical stage. If you have not really done well in grade 12, obviously it's going to reflect on what institution you go to. Right? So those are the stages. Now, in terms of the tools that I use, as I said before, first of all, one of the things that students don't do, and we'll talk about this perhaps. I don't know if there's a question about male versus female, because there's a discrepancy.
Yes, you have got a lot of questions there.
Okay, so students do not commonly come and ask for help. So what we do is, in my line of work, we monitor students' progress. Teachers do have the information if a student is absent for class, and I'm talking at the post-secondary institution. But it's also evident at the high school or secondary level. We monitor student progress from attendance to academic to assignments, and we identify these things so we can call students in prior to something drastic happening. So that's one of the tools, is monitoring. The other thing is we make referrals when we see something that is quite serious. So if there's something we identify and we think someone needs to intervene outside of the school, we have some intervention that happens at that stage as well too. And you have to be proactive. Right.
Okay. So as a educational and student advisor, what is the goal or target to be achieved by providing advice to those students? And this advice and counseling, how it will help the student to be successful in his studies?
Okay, so as I said earlier, obviously it's the 21st century is knowledge-based economy. So you need knowledge. How do you make students successful? Now, if preparation is key, preparation at foundation, right? Foundation level at prep school. Again, preparation prior to reaching grade 7, because that's a key stage, has been identified. And preparation prior to going to high school. Now, the problem happens what? It compounds. You're not prepared well at the foundation level. You're not prepared well at the year 7, and you're not prepared well at year 12. So there are difficulties among difficulties among difficulties, and what happens is psychological, physical, and to mediate those or to overcome those challenges become overwhelming, not only for the parents, but also for the student.
The student itself,
and they give up. The giving up sometimes is okay if you have help. The problem is some students go into depression. And this is not only in our community, but it's also in the wider community. And that leads to medication, that leads to drugs, that leads to mental health issues, that leads to lack of interest in anything.
So it starts only from very little. If you take very little careness in the first stage, we'll avoid all this disaster or damage that's going to happen to
predominantly, yes.
So on today's world, Mr. Khaled, males show less interest in education. Why? oppositely, we see females more interested in education and are successful in their educational life.
You've actually answered the first question yourself, interest. Research shows that males are less interested.
Yes.
Less interested. So that's actually, it is a key foundation. Just the interest in itself, it's been found when they've asked students after they've dropped out, and these are research that's done after they've left or dropped out of school. Obviously, there are no exit interviews at schools, and that's one thing that I'm really interested in, is to have exit interviews at the university level when students are leaving. So interest is one of the things that it's been predominantly been reported. They say, I have no interest. Now, when they have asked further, say, what is the lack of, I'm not interested, I'm bored. So interest and boredom is high. Secondly, it's the understanding of the importance of education. They place, males tend to place, and this is through research, I'm not just saying this, they place less value on education versus females. Now, my feeling is, and this is not reported, my feeling is that we understand that if you're a man, you can do labor work, you can do construction, you can do cleaning, you can do many other things. So you feel that perhaps, if I don't
to waste the time and just go ahead to...
And you find other ways to make money. Perhaps you're not interested in a lot of money. For females, they don't see these opportunities as available.
For them,
And if they were to compete with males in these male-dominated type of work, they may not have much opportunity. Some of them do find opportunity, but predominantly is male-dominated. So the interest is one for females, and I think there is also the interest in education. So for some reason, females have a tendency to want to be more educated. This has not been always the case, and that's not because females want to be educated more than male. In the past, there were limitations for females to go to school because of the need to stay at home, even in the West. This has only changed after the 1970s in North America. So now, the key factors, as research suggests, it's basically the interest, lack of interest, boredom, also understanding that there is no need for me to continue with further education. And my feeling is it's because they can probably do other things to gain currency. Not the same so for females, obviously.
So students, before they choose what to study in college or unis, what type of questions they ask themselves?
Well, I know what type of questions they ask me.
That's why I am asking.
And it's I know the predominantly the question, and I say this every time I am invited to deliver a session. Predominantly the number one question that students ask, and they're leaving high school or about to leave high school, is, I don't know what I will take in university or in college. And for many years, I struggled with them to answer those questions. But only recently, maybe in the last 2 years, I was listening to a talk by a gentleman or a man named Simon Sinek. I think he's from the UK. And he was talking about how companies create positive leadership, or positive leadership creates positive companies. And he said the wrong questions are being asked. And the question that's always being asked is, what will we do? What will we do? The same thing. And then I thought, what is the question that you need to ask? And his answer was, why? If you can answer why, you will be one of the top companies. And he gave examples, whether it's Apple, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Facebook. All of these leading companies, they've asked the why question. They did not ask the what. When I listened to that, I said, that is exactly what students need to fulfill. Because psychology, again, tells us the why is tied to feeling. When you have a feeling and you're associated emotionally with something you want to do, you will do it forever.
But the what is just to get on direct answer.
What is more, it's more of a physical need. How do I buy that Mercedes? What type of job will get me that Mercedes? And that sometimes it's a motivation, but it's not enough motivation for you to continue to do something you don't like. And we know in North America, I'm assuming it might be similar in Australia, that right now in a career, professionally, people change careers 7 times before they retire. This is professional careers. So what does that mean? When you look further into it, it shows that perhaps they've looked at the answer by asking what? And they've succeeded in finding that profession, but they were not happy. So they continued to
why I'm not happy?
Why am I going to this university?
Yeah.
That is the question you need to ask. Not what will I take? Not because society wants you to go to university. No, that's not the answer. Not because your mom or dad wants you to go to university.
Yeah.
Why do you want to go to university? When you can answer that why question, you will find a deeper meaning that will not just only take you to university, that will keep you in university as well. Because the desire is always to look for something you want to belong to. And when you find the passion in something, there is no feeling like it. You want to do it for a long time. You will not change your career 7 times. You will continue because you see progress, not just in terms of the physical labor that you can see and foster, but also in the emotional and psychological
mental
growth that you see. And people see that in you. When you do a work that you're really passionate about, you don't care if you do it for free.
That's right.
Okay. So that is the question. And there are several steps to get to that, but we'll go into other things, but the why question. So for our listeners, if you're listening out there and you're planning on going into post-secondary, the answer and the question is not what, but the question is why.
Why?
Why do you want to go to university?
That's good. So, Khalid, let's take you a little bit to our own Eritrean society. As you mentioned, you migrated to Canada when you are 14 or 13 years old. Yes. And to see you in this position, very successful man, it's really good. Just I want to ask you, in our Eritrean society, there is 2 wheels, and you mentioned that actually. Your parents want you to be here, but you have to ask yourself why you want to go there, not for your family, not for a friend, not for dad or mom, but for yourself. So how we can balance where the family wants to see you and what you want to be? How this student can balance these 2 things?
Generally speaking, I'll get into the
and I think you got that experience.
Yes, generally speaking, it's a difficult task and it's very delicate.
Yeah.
Not just with our own communities, but generally when you want to speak about the balance between what parents want and what the student wants.
Yep.
The challenge that I see, and speaking from my own experience with Canadian Eritreans, is that the parents, as I said earlier, the parents came as immigrants with many challenges, and they continue to experience challenges. They may not have fulfilled their own potential, the parents, but then they're there to fulfill their kids' potential.
Yes.
And so what happens is this becomes a burden on the student because the parents continually remind them. Now, I don't want parents to take this negatively when I say this. And I have this feedback from students, Eritrean students, and African students in general, is that the parents make them feel that I brought you to this country for your own good. I did this for you. I did this for you. I did this for you. Now, the difference is when you look at the West and how they raise their kids, these are basic things that parents have to provide for their children. The housing, the food, the clothing, the education. These are basics. They never burden their kids by saying, I did this for you, therefore you owe me this almost. So it becomes almost like a life sentence on the student, and the students feel it. Now, I can't stress enough the psychology of really putting that burden on the children from an early age. And I hear this. I've had my own parents say these things to me. Okay, this is the reason we came, da-da-da-da-da. Now, parents, I think what they need to do is, and they mean well, what parents need to do, and to meet halfway with their kids, is to ask questions. What are you planning to do next? Because parents are very good at the what question.
Yes.
The kids have to be respectful of the parents' questions, and I think we have more than, the what, in terms of how parents and children interact. Our parents are very involved in our lives, Eritreans, generally, right? Whether it's marriage, or whether it's other events, whether it's this, whether it's language, they're very involved. And you can't just expect them to shut them out. So I think for students also, you have a responsibility to be sensitive to your parents' needs when they speak to you this way. because they don't have any other way of communicating with you.
Yep.
That's how their parents communicated with them, but this is how your parents are communicating with you in the West. So what you're doing is you're listening through the Western ear, right? But you're listening to someone who's speaking to you from Eritrea almost.
Yep, yep.
So the expectation is you need to meet halfway. And I think for the parents, don't put a burden on your kids because you brought them to Australia, to Canada, to America. I think you really need to let them know that you value their time here and they have opportunities. And for the students, you do have opportunities here. You have state-of-the-art classrooms. If your instructor or professor or teacher is absent, you have a substitute teacher. Even you did not know that there was one waiting for you. If this was back home, there is no safety, first of all, going to school. There is no continuation in going to school. If your teacher is absent, you perhaps have no classes that day. So you really have to appreciate, and also the resources. The textbooks are up to date. You know, back in Eritrea, they're probably using predated textbooks. Here, the new edition is coming every year. So everything that's provided to you, tablets to students at an elementary level. So I think there are many reasons why you have to be grateful for being here. And I think your parents see those things, and when they see you not successful, they question and they are upset. But that's the language they know how to communicate with you.
Yeah. So as education advisor, education and students advisor, or parents, in which stage we can decide the final direction of a student in what he will be good at? For example, as a parent or...
I think other than the parents will not decide and should not decide. That's number one.
Yes.
Okay, there has to be independence and decision making because it's the student that go into class, that's studying, that will also do that profession for the rest of their life, hopefully. I think the parents' role has to be always fostering and also providing the resources. As we said, the basic resources are those. In addition to that, you really need to be aware of what your kids are doing in school. You can ask them questions about their progress, ask them questions about their classes. Now, this begins at a certain age, by the way. So independency for students, for me, the way I feel, and this is not through research, but just through my own experience, I think from year 7, you have to let students be independent. And they're thinking, from year 7, you have to let students be independent in their thinking and how they access information in terms of how to receive resources. It's difficult for parents who do not have the knowledge, and this is only for parents who do not have the knowledge to help their students. But I think up to year 6, so it's really important to give them that independence. Now, how to make that decision and be successful at an age, to know what direction you should go to university. When I used to tutor many years ago, and then I continued to do a separate program from that, I used to take students as early as year 6 and year 7 to the university, just to show them around, give them a sense of what the environment in post-secondary is. What does it mean? They're not afraid when they think about university, but
that's right, because they have
unfortunately some of our students, they're never seen university unless it's time for them to enter university. So they need to be familiarized with that environment so they're comfortable even thinking.
So that's very important in the early age to take kids like to the unis, the high educational institutes, and so it will give them a sense of that's the future.
Yes. It gives them a sense that that's the future, but also gives them a sense that the present is this. The future might be even brighter because you are going to be making the future. But more importantly is they will see perhaps people in their neighborhood who are older than them who are studying, right? And universities are very welcoming. If even communities wanted to do this, just taking them on tours, university is very welcoming to do that.
It's very interesting, Khalid, and I have got a lot of questions and time is running out. But what is there is a service for survey for Western countries, and I think we mentioned that, including Australia, shows big number of first-year students in unis and higher educational institute. They drop from continuing their education. In your opinion, what is the reason? How it is will be for migrants too? I think we touched that, but just to very quickly, I have got a lot of questions for you.
So, and the survey or the research shows that there is a dramatic increase in terms of dropouts, student dropouts at the post-secondary level. So after they attend the first year, they do not go past the first year. Now, the reasons are many, but the two predominant reasons, number one is academic. And in my line of work, that's not acceptable, because once you've been accepted into a university or college, that means you have the grades, the level to continue education. Yes. So the question there is, why is it becoming a problem? And this is not only for those who have actually just made it into university. So let's say if the entrance requirement was 70, and you have 70, you made it. There's also for students who have actually scored above 90.
Yes.
So academics in university means different. It doesn't mean you're not a smart student. It just means you could not cope with the university. The second major reason is financial. Those are the two major reasons that they provide. Now, when you're a university, you have to be careful for students. Do not leave home if you don't have to.
Yep.
Right? Financially, you cannot be independent because student loans and grants are very limited. And do not spend your money on things that you cannot afford to keep, because some of the things you may be keeping when you're in high school that you have monthly payments for, you have to budget very carefully.
Yes.
So you will run out of money, and you'll spend all your time in university. So you have to understand that you're not cooking at home, you're not eating your mom and dad's cooking at home. So it's very important to budget your money. So financial is a huge burden. And the percentages are, on average, 27 nationally. Victoria is doing better than most, but it's at 25%. So 1 in every 4 students drop out from university. And in the low socioeconomic status groups, and unfortunately some of our communities fall into that, it goes much higher than that, up to 40%.
So these students, they are not dropping off because they can't, they don't have the level, but they are dropping out for the reasons that you mentioned, economically, plus academically.
Yes.
So what is the price that the nations pay for those dropouts, including Australia too? Because I think this is funded by government.
Exactly.
So what's the price the nation will pay for those dropouts?
It's huge. I don't know the dollar amounts. But when you think about a single student accessing student loans, and predominantly all students need to access student loans, education is very expensive. Some of the programs can run up to $20,000 a year.
Yes.
Now, that does not include your living expenses and other things, because you can apply for those
things.
Only the fees. And that's only the student loan. In addition to that, Western countries provide, Australia similar to Canada, they provide grants, which is free money.
Yep.
You don't have to pay that back. When student drops out, economically, they're losing on two ends. Number one, the grants you don't have to pay, so that's gone. And has not been an investment in your education.
Yep.
The second part is the student loan. The expectation of a student loan is when you finish your education, you will find a job eventually and you will begin to pay back. When you drop out, yes, you will still have to pay the student loan, but employment is not viable. Psychologically, the students are not ready when they drop out of school. Like, as I mentioned earlier, some of them are depressed. Some of them are not ready to do anything at that time. Some of them are ashamed for leaving. So they actually rely on the government to support them, whether it's Centrelink, whether it's any other resources.
So it is not only losing the fund that it has been provided or the students' loan, but even though they are getting more,
also becoming a burden. And I don't like to say the word burden, because I think what happens is when help is needed, obviously the state needs to extend that help. But I think once you've been giving the basic resources to succeed, and you have not done so, and I can't blame this only on the students, but part of the things
for a lot of reasons.
There are many reasons, and I don't think anyone wants to begin university and then quit. That's not the intention. No student goes to university wanting to quit. But things do happen, and again, preparation is key.
So from your experience as educational and student advisor, what is the shortage that the Eritrean students have? And where do you think he or she needs the educational advice? Now I'm going to rush you because I have got only
that's okay.
8 minutes.
Okay, so I can't speak for Australia. I've spoken to a few here, and I can't generalize. But predominantly in Canada, the issue for Eritreans is, again, they don't see and it depends. It depends who you talk to, because there's generational gap as well, too.
Yes, that's right.
But even the ones that are younger, they don't see the value of education. I think we're stuck in the 20th century, some of us, the same century that our parents were from. We need to move to that knowledge-based economy. We think that we can be successful for a long time without education, especially males.
Knowledge-based economy.
Without it could even be a 6-month certification that will go a long way.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think it's predominantly it's the lack of knowing the importance of education, and also there might be some other difficulties, but I think the listeners can really relate their own.
Yep.
Yeah.
So to be successful, you need to organize your studying time, your sleeping time, the type of food that you consume, what that means to students, and what are the type of food that students should take.
Okay, so quickly, so this is very critical, and that's the program that I began to deliver. I used to tutor for many years, and I saw tutoring as an avenue to help students with simple questions. However, that seemed almost like a mechanic going with his vehicle to the mechanic shop to fix something and then return when something else was broken. Now, the program that I started delivering years ago, and I go to universities and local communities and high schools to deliver this, is basically to give students the resources to be successful. And so when we speak about nutrition, there's a value for nutrition for the brain.
I think we have got a caller. Hello.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
معك عامر.
Yeah, hello, Ustaz Amr. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello, Vic. I'm just calling because I can see the team is rushing. There's no time.
Yes.
But because of the importance of this interview, first of all, I would like to thank the team and your guest, the honored guest.
Thank you.
And I suggest, I don't know, I'm intervening in your program, but I suggest if you can have a series of interviews of this sort of interview with your honored guest, because I think it is very important and critical for the Eritrean community here in Australia. And I've got a lot of questions. I've been listening.
Me too, Amr. I've got a lot
of questions. So I think if you can
organize
your guest, organize for 3 or 4 sessions, that would be important. And the other thing is, because you guys on the radio, you are already connected with the Eritrean community, if you can also organize a sort of lectures or sessions within the Eritrean community scope, that would be useful, because we have a lot of problems, guys, and we are all parents. So,
yes.
Yeah.
That's a very important point, Amr, and I think we're going to have a second and third in the radio, and even we are talking to organize a day, like information session day or an open day. And as you said, all of us, we are parents, and I think it's very important to use Mr. Khaled, and he's well-experienced person, and he is specialized on that field. So I think he's going to be really helpful to the community. Thank you, Amr.
Thank you.
Dear listeners, still we are running this interview with Mr. Khaled Idres Saed Ali, and maybe my last or before the last question will be for you, Khaled. Eritreans, they lived in different countries. As you know, our background is from wars and refugee backgrounds, and we have been through a lot of different countries. And we migrated to the West maybe lately, 30 years ago. So, and some of the parents, they went to school in older age, or some students, they went to school too in older age. Do you think being from different culture, having language shortage, different curriculum, it has its impact for not being successful?
Definitely yes. What I'd like to expand on that, but quickly I'd like to mention with regards to that last question you asked me about, how to be successful in nutrition. I will not explain too much, but I just would like you to know, hopefully if we do a second or third or even fourth, we'll probably expound more on the nutritional value, sleep, study habits, and many different aspects of how to become academically successful. So, I apologize for not having the opportunity to cover that right now, but I'll go into this important question. Yeah. So, there is an impact. There is an impact, and it's significant impact, and we have to be realistic again. I think we need to be supportive of the parents. I know the focus is always on students. Yeah. I think we also sometimes we become a little bit not disillusioned, but predominantly preoccupied with the students, but the parents have real challenges. Now, many of these problems that the students experience affect the parents exponentially. Okay. We need to have also sessions where parents are also our focus. So, yes, it is a challenge. Yeah. Coming from a background, whether you're educated or not, but if it's outside from here, language is a barrier. We understand that. However, we live in a country where there are resources for all levels. If you don't speak English very well, there are programs, whether it's through AIMS, whether it's through other programs, free language. And they begin at the level that you require them. For students, if you are struggling with school and you're having some academic difficulties, you can begin with your school. You can begin at the public library. There are free tutors. You can look on the internet. There are many, many resources. So, alhamdulillah, in this country, there are resources for everyone, whether you're young or whether you're old, whether your language is limited or whether you're economically limited. So I think you just have to be resourceful.
In that point, Khalid, sorry for interrupting you, I'm a bit rushy.
Yes.
We have some students, they come from families, their background is from families, even they didn't went to school at all. And some of them, they studied in overseas. What do you think the negative or positive impact to the kid when your family are unliterated? They didn't went to school.
If they're uneducated,
have any.
It's similar to the last answer. Obviously, it is a challenge. It is a challenge because if you have parents who are not well educated here or were not well educated somewhere else,
or educated by other languages.
It's very, don't put, now I said earlier, parents put a burden on their kids. And the same thing, the students need to be resourceful in terms of utilizing these resources at school. But as I said, up to year 7, it's very difficult for students also to be resourceful. They rely on their parents.
And their parents fully,
right? The parents are everything for the kids at that age. And so they expect the parents. Now, also parents need to be resourceful within the community, within the library. There are many programs. Yes, there are challenges, but we are in a country that has resources, yes.
Anyway, Khalid, thank you very much for your time. And I have got a lot of questions, and I think we're going to catch up in a second and third interview, and maybe we'll have we'll call it whatever it is, a session, information session to parents, as it has been suggested by our caller, Mr. Amir Ibrahim. So for now, thank you, and we're going to leave it there.
I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and I thank the listeners for being patient and attentive. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear listeners, that was Mr. Khalid Idres Saed Ali, and hopefully in our second interview we'll continue with the rest of the questions. مستمعينا الأعزاء، كان ذلك الأستاذ خالد إدريس سعيد علي، نشكره لحضوره في الاستوديو، واعتقد استفدنا منه الكثير اليوم، وإن شاء الله حنواصل معه في حلقة ثانية لإكمال الأسئلة الكثيرة الموجودة. و تفضل أحمد، مع أنه زمن جاري.
نعم، زمن ما عندنا فعلا. شكرا جزيلا للزميل برهان واستاذ خالد إدريس سعيد علي. سنجري معه ايضا لقاء ان شاء الله باللغه العربيه، يمكن في حلقات قادمه يعني.
ممكن. وايضا
هو مستعد ايضا اذا في اي ندوه او في محاضره بحي القياس الوسط الجالي، مستعد يعني اذا كان في جهه بتنظم له اي.
وفي وسيله جاءت الاخ عامر رماها عليك يا استاذ محمد، وقال الاذاعه ممكن تعمل يعني، فهو كلام صح.
اقتراح جميل. نعم.
فنحن ان شاء الله مستمعينا الاعزاء سوف يكون لدينا لقاء اخر مع الاستاذ خالد إدريس سعيد، وايضا احتمال ننظم امسيه في هذا العام الجديد ونستفيد من خبراته ومجال عمله وعلمه. وإن شاء الله الأستاذ خالد سوف يكون إضافة جديدة وإضافة مميزة للجالية الإرتريا في ملبورن. و thank you خالد. وشكرا مستمعينا الأعزاء، حتى نلقاكم الأسبوع القادم. كان معكم برهان إسماعيل وأحمد محمود وضيفنا العزيز الأستاذ خالد إدريس سعيد.